Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Welcome friends. I welcome you to Chaitanya Studio of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University. Myself, Dr. Vinod L. Desai, working at Department of Computer Science and Technology, Sardar Patel University, Vallabh Vidyanagar. In today's session, we will talk regarding various attributes and or we can say properties and its attributes of cascading style sheet that is to be applied on the content of our web page. The properties to be discussed in these sessions includes border, margin and padding property, list attributes, table attributes and float properties. Okay, so what the border property is and how it helps us to set the borders of our, we can say, content, or we can say how do we set the style using it in our web page. So CSS border property allows us to set the style, color and width of the border. The border style property specifies the type of border. None of the other border properties will work without setting the border style like dotted, dashed, solid, double, groove, ridge, inset, outset, none and hidden. Okay, so there are 4 or 5 ways to set the border properties. Border style maybe we can say a border top, border right, border bottom, border left. Same way for border color, for the border top, border right, border left, border bottom. For the width property, the same way, border top, border bottom, border left, border right. For individual border sides, we can set it as well as we can set the border radius properties. Now let's understand this border property through an example. So we have a border example here. We have set it. So in the document of we have various paragraphs with different IDs like P1, P2, P3. Then after we have another paragraph with a class ID dotted, another paragraph with a class dashed, another paragraph with a solid, and another paragraph with a class double. Okay, and having a single context in the form of city name Ahmedabad, Vadodara, Surat, and Vallabh Vidyanagar. Okay, now on each paragraphs we have specified and applied various border properties. Let's see. So P dotted, that means my paragraph class having a dotted value on which we are applying a border style is groove, then top style is dotted, border bottom width is thick, border right color should be green. For the same way for the dashed, we can say paragraph having a class attribute dashed, a class value dashed. For that we are specifying the border property border style dashed and border radius 20 pixels. For the class having a value solid, for that we are specifying a border style to solid and color red. And for the paragraph class having a value double, we are setting the border style property to double and border width property to 8 pixels. Okay, now let's run it and see how this border property and its value reflects our content on a web page. So this way the border of various paragraphs is set. Okay, dotted, radius is there, then after we have double lined the borders like this. We can change as per our requirement. Okay, you can change it. Border style solid to as per the various values that we can provide. Okay, through a border property. You can have a dashed, solid, dotted lines as per a requirement. So various properties you can set for our content and its border. Now next is margin and padding property. So very important. CSS paddings are used to create space around the element inside any defined border. We can set different padding for the individual sides, top, bottom, left and right. So these are the 4 sides of any, we can say, object or control. it is very important to add border properties to implement padding properties. Okay, so you need to be careful and aware that if you want to apply padding property, there should be a borders property set. Padding properties can have the following values: length in centimeters, pixels, points, etc., width in percentage. Okay, now if the padding property has three values like margin 40 pixels, 100 pixels and 120 pixels, then it will be considered as top 40 pixels, right and left 100 pixels and bottom 120 pixels. That means if three values is there, then middle one will be considered for the left and right. If the padding property has two values like margin 40 pixels and 100 pixels, then it will be considered as top and bottom would be 40 pixels and left right would be 100 pixels. Same way, if the padding property has one value like 100 pixels, then it will be set for top, bottom, left and right to 100 pixels. CSS margins are used to create space around the element. Okay, we can set the different size of margin for individual sides like top, bottom, left, right. Margin properties can have the following values: length in centimeters, pixel and points, width and percentage of the element. If the margin property has three values like margin 40 pixels, 100 pixel, 120 pixels, then it will be considered as top 40, right, left 100 and bottom 120. If the margin property has two values like margin 40, 100 pixels, then it will be considered as top, bottom 40 pixel, left, right 100 pixels. If the margin property has one value like margin 100 pixels, then it will be considered as top, left, right and bottom 100 pixels. Let's understand it through a practical example. Okay, margin and padding properties, we have already this one. So here we have a header in our document, then after three paragraphs with the different IDs P1, P2 and P3 having a various different kinds of content, various content data. So now we have set for header 1, that is margin is of 80 pixels, 100 pixel, 50 pixels and 80 pixels. That means we have set for the four sides. Then after for the P1 ID, that paragraph 1 having a P1 ID, we are setting the padding property to 80 pixels, 50x pixel and 100 pixel. We are providing three padding property values. So that means what will happen? Okay, this will be considered, the middle one will be considered for the left and right. Okay, for the border we have provided 1 pixel solid black. Then for the paragraph 2 we are providing the margin 50 pixels for all sides. Then border is 70 pixels solid green. Then after body padding providing 80 pixels for all the sides. Okay, so this way we can set the margin and padding properties for our content on a web page. Now try to run this to understand its effect on our content. So this is how the margin and padding property reflects the changes on our web content or a web page. If we change it, so if we change certain properties in terms of parameter values of margin and padding, it's okay. But suppose if you want a border solid dotted, instead of solid if you want it dotted, then you can change it and see whether it reflects, how it reflects. Refresh it. Okay, so it is reflecting as you can see over here, okay, on the first content. Okay, if you want to set it over here dotted, let us see. So it will reflect in such a way. Okay, so by this way you can change the property of margin and padding and make your page content on a web page more attractive. Okay, the difference between margin and padding property. So margin is used to create a space around elements and padding is used to create space around elements inside the border. As we already discussed that border property is very important if you are setting a padding property. So it must be set inside the border. We can set the margin property to auto, but we can't set the padding property to auto. If in margin property we can allow negative or float numbers, but in padding we can't allow negative values. Margin and padding targets all four sides of the element. Margin and padding will work without the border property also, but it is advisable and necessary that there should be a, we can say, border property set while setting the padding property. Next is list property. The list in CSS specifies the listing of the contents or items in a particular manner. That is, it can either be organized orderly or unordered way, as we already discussed in, we can say, HTML, which helps to make a clean web page. It can be used to arrange the huge data with a variety of content, as they are flexible and easy to manage. The default style for the list is borderless. The list can be categorized into two types: unordered list, ordered list. In unordered list, the list items are marked with bullets, small black circles by default. Ordered list, the list items are marked with numbers and alphabets. We have the following CSS list properties. List style type, in which we can provide disk, character or custom counter style. The list style image. This property is used to set the image that will be used as the list item. Okay, list item position. It specifies the position of the marker box with respect to the principal content box. List style. This property is used to set the list style. List style type. The list style type property is CSS specifies the appearance of the list item markers, such as a disk, character or custom counter style. If list style image has the value none. Property values may be for the list style type, it may be a disk, it may be circle, square, decimal, lower Roman, upper Roman, lower Greek, upper Latin, lower Latin, none. Okay, this value may be reflected based on the version of the browsers and its supporting the property. Okay, so depending on the browser and its version, this property will be reflected. List style image. This property specifies the image as a list item marker. The list style image property is used to set an image to be used as the list item marker. Its default value is none. List style position. This property specifies the position of the list item marker. The list style position property is used to set the position of the marker relative to the list item. There are two type of values for the position. It may be outside or inside. You can set either one as per your requirement, whether you want it outside or inside of the content box. Okay, so let's try to understand it through the example. List property. So here we have a list of, we can say, ordered list and unordered list. As you can see, in our document we have one headers, one paragraph, 2-3 paragraphs is there. Sorry. Then after we have a header to state of India's. Okay, so various states is provided in unordered list as well as in ordered list. In ordered list we have a class West, North, while in a ordered list we have a class East and South. So for on each class we are providing a list properties like this. On the class which we have defined West states, so we are using this class, or we can say selectors, class selectors West is defined for the unordered list, on which we are providing the list style square. We can set any one. Okay, list style property type to square, image we can provide is, then list style position we can provide outside position, then list style disk inside, okay, or outside. The same way for the East we can provide it lower Latin, upper Latin or alphabet. Default one is decimal. Okay, and other values, as we already said, that depending on the browser it will support, and its version should be, we can say, compatible. Okay, now let's try to run it to understand it in more better way. Where is it? Yes. Okay, list. So as you can see that the content has been reflected of the list based on the property we have set. Okay, here we have set a disk property and it is provided inside. See here, this Jammu Kashmir, Delhi and Punjab is outer side of the vertical, we can say default one, why this waste class is having a it is inside then the, we can say, other content of the state. So because we have set it inside, as you can see, this is inside. Okay, this first three lines is in comment, so right now don't, we can say, consider, because we have content, we have commented it. You can set it and test it in this way as well. Okay, so we have set it a disk and inside. Okay, you can change it to outside as well and just to see how it reflects outside. Okay, now let's see. Okay, it will come parallelly from inside to outside to this below content. Just refresh the page. See here, now it comes outside. So this way you can set the position property. Then even you can say lower Latin word is there, instead of say you can have a upper Latin as well. See here, ABC is turned to capital, likewise. So this way we can set the properties for the list of our web page content and you can reflect it as per the requirement of web page designing and our website requirement. The next one is table property. Makes our content of the table more attractive, and using this table property we can set or we can highlight the values contained in a cell of the table as per our requirement. There are multiple ways of styling an HTML table. Some of them are by adjusting the table borders, the row column height, the width, font colors and many more animations like hover effects. Border collapse property is there, so we can merge the borders of two adjacent cells, that is remove the gap between the adjacent borders completely. Padding property, it modifies the space between the cell content and cell borders. On the other hand, the border spacing property modifies the space between two adjacent cell borders. Using the text align property, we can change the alignment of center, alignment to center, left or right. Color property we can set or use to adjust the font color of the table content. Height and width property allows us to change the height and width of the entire table as well as individual rows and columns. We can change the height and width of HTML elements like table, th, tr, td. Then empty cell is there, which property allows us to remove the border of the cells that are empty. There are two properties for the value, show and hide. If you will set value hide, that means empty cell is not going to be shown, and if you will put a show value, then empty cell will be visible. Okay, this property will not show any effect when it is used alongside border collapse. Table layout, this property defines how the layout of the table is rendered in the browser. There are two values for this property, auto and fixed. The default value is auto. We apply this property to table HTML element. Okay, so you can set either this using the table layout. It may have value either auto or fixed. If you want to make a table responsive, we need to set, we can say, a style in a division tag like overflow -x colon value would be auto, and then after provide the width to the table 100%. So whenever you will resize the window, the content of the table will also adjust as per the size of the window, because now we have set the table responsive. Now try to understand this table property through the example. How do we set various property for the table? So now let's see, in our document we have a table which contains Indian state and its capitals. Like we have a table caption is there, table heading is divided with a serial number, states and capital. and then after we are providing the various values in a table body tag. 1 Gujarat, capital Gandhinagar, second Madhya Pradesh Bhopal, and third one is Rajasthan, but we are keeping as capital for the Rajasthan empty, as you can see over here, okay, because that we want to see through the property, we want to set, understand. And for this table and various tags of the table, we have set the table properties. For body, we have simple alignment is left, H1, it's having a color and height. For the table, okay, these lines are, we can say, commented, but we have set width 50%. Then table layout we have set fixed instead of auto. Then table header, and this is a grouped selectors, as we already discussed, TH and TD. For that we are specifying the border is equal to 1 pixel solid. Then padding we have set to 0.5 rem. Text alignment is kept right. Then after we have set this child table body TR, this is, we can say, at nth child odd cells we are trying to reflect with this color, and even child, that means even rows and odd rows, we have provided a selector effects, nth child effect, and its border is set to this color. Okay, so this way we can style the table and reflect and show the highlight very important content of the table in a highlighted manner. Okay, let's run this program and understand how table property helps us to make our table content more attractive and meaningful. How it looks, let us see. So this is what our table property applied on our table content. Okay, so odd rows and even rows is reflected with a different colors in a background and content as well. Okay, now let's make certain changes in a few property of the table and try to see. Then after you can set the width to from 50% to 100%, so it will occupy the whole window space, as you can see now. Just make a change like this. Okay, you can have a border of this, you can say TH and TD to solid or whatever you want. Okay, even padding properties you can set, depth alignment right and left you can set it, or your rows colors and color odd rows, even rows, you can set various effects on those, even on the contents. So by this way we can set the table property on the table content in our web page. Then the float property is there. So this, there is a lot of text with pictures on their right, left, over or below. It makes it look more attractive and easier to see both text and image simultaneously. So sometimes what happens, if you want to place an image along with the text content for it, then it becomes very tedious or complex for the users to set the image on a particular place on a web page along with its content. So the float property will help us to do so. The float is a CSS property that positions the element horizontally, that is left or right. It enables the text, image or other line elements to wrap around the floating element. Elements other than the floating elements also become part of the flow. It clears the area on either side of the floating element by specifying its position. Elements are not allowed to float vertically. There is no up and down float values. This property is ignored by the absolute or fixed position element. The syntax of floating property is, you can specify the value in terms of none, left, right, initial, inherit. Okay, none is the default value and element does not float. Left, it floats on the left side of the container. Right, it floats on the right side of the container. Okay, now let's understand the float property through proper example. Okay, it in the initial property remains as it is, while in a inherit it will inherit the property from its container, parent container. Now let's try to understand the float property through examples. So we have a float application document in which, let's say we have a H1 header 1 paragraph with a span tag as well. Okay, and then after paragraph, again one paragraph with a span tag, again having a, we can say, first letter of department D is put in a span tag, and in one image is there. Okay, and having alternate and style attribute. So our document contains either three paragraphs having a span tags and one image, and on these contents we are specifying a floating property. So the span tag, we have set this float property for the first, we can say span tag is left, so it should be kept left, size should be like this, font family and line height. For the ID V specified for the third paragraph, we have set color blue. Okay, then after float, we have floating property kept to left instead, or we can instead you can set to right. Font size is 400%, then font family is there, and line height is set to 80%, and image we have set it to float to right. Okay, so the image tag or image selectors element selector is having a floating property value set to right. Now let's see through the execution. We will execute. So you can see that image is set to right side, while the two content of our paragraphs, you can say we have set it float property to left, and we have set the size to 400 points percentage. So it will reflect in such a way. You can set the floating property to anyone, left, right, as per your requirement, and you can set the content of that property as per your requirement for the web page. So this is what all about the float property of the CSS. Okay friends, in this session we have discussed various property of CSS like border, table, list in a way along with their various attributes and values to make our web page more attractive and effective. Thank you very much.